there's a lot of these types of cases where people come across beings and they seem to be digging in the ground or capturing bugs or something like that. Are they scientists, and are they examining our world? And if they are, why? Is it just curiosity, or is there something more sinister at work? A day hike turns strange when a man stumbles upon an odd childlike figure in the forest. It was fall 2014. The witness was out walking in the forest near his home in Rochester, Minnesota. At some point during the hike, he caught sight of movement in the forest. It was about 100 yards away. He initially thought it was an animal, most likely a deer. It was upwind from him, and he figured that if he was quiet enough, he might be able to sneak up on it and get a closer look. I quietly made my way towards it. When I was about 50 yards away, I could see that it was not an animal, but a kid. I thought perhaps he might be lost in the woods or just walking around, exploring like myself. I called out to him to ask if he needed any help. "Hello there," I called. What I thought was a kid turned around, and I could see that this thing was not a human. It had the shape of a kid, but longer arms and legs. Its face was not human at all. The witness claims that the creature had no nose, or at least it wasn't visible to him, and the eyes were oversized and the mouth seemed smaller than a regular person's. He was wearing what looked to the witness like a white jumpsuit. As soon as the figure had turned around towards me, he turned again and took off running away from me. I would have been scared if he was running towards me, but like I said, he was the one doing the running. The witness felt that he did not want to frighten them any more than he already had, and he opted not to chase after it. Also, he wasn't carrying a weapon, so he had very little chance of defending himself if the situation were to move sideways. He did, however, decide to walk to the spot where he had seen the creature standing and have a look. This is when things took an even stranger turn. As I was walking towards the spot, I heard a hissing sound in the air. I looked up and saw a metallic disc shooting across the sky away from where I was. The witness reached into his pocket for his phone to snap a photo, but by the time he had fished it out, the object was gone. There was not a trace of it in the sky, no faint light in the distance, nothing. When I got to the spot where he had been, I saw fresh cuts on a bush. He had been cutting branches off a bush for some reason. Maybe some kind of scientific survey. Just speculating here, but seems logical. This account can be found in the UFO Sentinel archive. You gotta wonder how many times this has happened. Somebody's off in the woods, camping, hiking, they're walking along a path or walking through a trail, and boom, there's something there that they don't know what it is, or there's some kind of a craft there that they don't know what that is, and then they're never heard from again. Two young men hitchhiking from Spain find themselves receiving a ride from a very strange man. During the mid-1960s, Stephen Smith, a pseudonym, lived and worked in Spain, and in order to visit his home in the Midlands, he was often required to hitchhike through Spain and France, and then up from the south of England. Needless to say, such visits home were infrequent, but occasionally he felt the need to reconnect. This incident took place during one of these long treks home in 1965. One of Smith's friends had decided to join him on his journey home this time. Smith welcomed the company. They were hitchhiking back and had found some luck, except the driver was forced to let them off in the middle of the countryside, late in the night. Smith recalled that it was pitch black on that backcountry road. The two friends realized that they were not in a good spot, as it was likely there wouldn't be a lot of cars passing down that road, and so the chances of catching a ride were unlikely, at least for a few hours. The two began to walk and walk. Thankfully, their eyes adjusted to the darkness, and they were able to at least make out the road and their surroundings. Lots of fields. They kept their eyes out for any passing motorists, and, as luck would have it, it wasn't long before some lights appeared in the distance. The car slowly pulled up beside them. They could make out a man inside. "Jump in, lads. Where are you going to?" the driver asked. They told him that they were going to Nottingham or Derby, that either one would do. Smith cannot remember where they were at the time, but they were coming up from the south to the north. They promptly climbed inside. To make conversation, they asked the driver, "What's the weather been like here? Has it been very good?" The man seemed unsure, responding, "I think it's been quite sunny." Smith thought it odd. "You think it's been quite sunny?" This time the driver responded simply, "Oh yes, it's been quite sunny." Smith then indicated that he and his friend had been in Spain and didn't know what the weather had been like in England. Then the conversation turned very, very strange when the driver told him that he was unable to gauge the temperature, as he was wearing a plastic suit. "It starts at the neck here, you can see it. It's under my clothes. I can show you the edge of it. It goes from my neck and my cuffs, goes all the way over my body, and it goes right down to my ankles," the driver told him. Smith and his friend could only look at each other in disbelief. Somehow they had found themselves in the company of a weirdo, they reasoned. It was at that point the driver indicated that he wore the suit because of a skin condition that he had. He added that he couldn't feel the temperature of the outside world. Smith remembered that it was dark in the man's car, and he couldn't see the edge of the man's cuffs to confirm that he was indeed wearing the suit, but he assumed so, or why else would he tell them? "This is the reason I can't feel the outside temperature," the driver reiterated. Smith told the man that they understood his situation. After driving for a bit longer, the man slowly pulled over. "This is as far as I can take you," he told them. Despite the fact that they were still in the country and it was pitch black outside, the two friends were more than happy to get out of the car. "Okay, thanks very much," they told him as they grabbed their bags and climbed out. "Sorry I couldn't help you anymore," the driver said. After bidding them farewell, he drove off down the road into the night. Smith recalled that it was so dark, you could only see the red lights of the man's car as they got further and further away. And then something truly peculiar happened. Suddenly his car went off down the road, turned a distant corner, and took off in the air. Smith and his friend could not believe what they had just witnessed. It was very clear the lights were on the road, and then somehow they left the road and climbed into the air and eventually flew off out of sight. Either the man's car could fly, it was 1965 and the idea of flying cars were relegated to children's comic books and movies, or they had just witnessed something very unusual. It didn't take long for them to consider the possibility that the strange man with the plastic suit was actually a, quote, spaceman, and his car wasn't a car at all. What had just happened, they wondered. Curiously, the oddities didn't end there. Smith and his friend began walking down the road, uncertain of where they were, only that it was somewhere outside Nottingham. As they rounded the corner to their left, they noticed what looked to them like a large airfield, and something they assumed was a plane took off just as they got to the bend in the road. They both thought it odd that an airfield would be out in the middle of nowhere. After examining it for a few moments, the two friends carried on down the road. In the years since the incident, which was printed in OVNI magazine in March 1993, Smith indicated that he did not know where the airfield was, as he's not been able to find it. Upon thinking about it, he wasn't sure what kind of airfield it even was. Everything about that night was odd. Regarding the man that gave them a lift, Smith and his friend wondered why he couldn't figure out temperature. Even with a plastic suit on, he should have been able to determine if it was warm or cold. To them, it was as if he truly didn't have the capacity to understand temperature, which is really strange. Smith had no idea what to make of the strange man in his flying car in the Phantom airfield, and he felt that after 28 years, he needed to tell his story. It's interesting that he said, looking back, that they didn't know what kind of an airfield it was. That's a strange thing to say. Like, you typically can tell what an airfield is or what it looks like. It sounds like they stumbled across some either military operation or some other operation, and there was something going on in that field, and they just happened to stumble upon it, and possibly this being that picked them up was involved with whatever was going on in this field. It's very strange. Why else would he drop them off right there? It's just like the conversation itself was very strange. It's like these beings don't know how to talk to people. Kill talked about that a lot. It's just like the conversation, he starts telling them this stuff about himself, that he's wearing this suit, that he can't tell temperature, things like that. Like, he didn't have to tell them that. Why would he reveal that? It's like, what was the whole point of any of it? Why did he pick them up and then drop them, like drive up the road a little ways, tell them a bunch of stuff he probably shouldn't have told them, and then drop them off? Why do these beings do what they do? Like, that's the thing about these cases that are so interesting, the behavior of these beings.